I hope you enjoyed that curry recipe there. I certainly might be ordering one of those a little bit later today. Welcome back to India Global Forum. Really excited to be about our next discussion. We know that COVID-19 has accelerated the digital revolution, and in some cases we have seen 8 years of change in just a year. But that's only for those who have access. I just looked up the figures. We're now at 54% of the world having some access to a form of the internet. I'm delighted to discuss this in conversation with a former top banker who led the State Bank of India, the country's largest lender. She is now chair and CEO of Salesforce India, Arundhati Bhattacharya. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the digital stage. You've moved from being a banker to working in one of the world's largest tech companies. Tell me, how do you view India's technological revolution, especially in the last year?
I think it's really and truly been expedited. India was already on a digital journey, but I think, at this point of time, what could have taken 2 or 3 years longer has actually been, compressed into a matter of 1 year. And if you look at the digital journey that we had been on, we had already created what is known as the India Stack, which is to do with the identity, creating the identity of digital identity of all our citizens, which is called the unique identification number. So that captures your 10 fingerprints and your retina scan and gives you a unique number to enable us to know who exactly the person is. We had also created, a lot of mobile penetration, which gave us the communication right across the country. And we have 60,000 villages. So you can imagine 600,000 villages. So you can imagine the spread of the population. And the three of them together, that is the Aadhaar, the bank accounts, and the mobile, the three put together, we call it the Jam Trinity. So India was well on its way to digitization. What has happened subsequent to the pandemic, however, is that whereas companies were not evolving as quickly as they should, now if you look at companies, 100% of them realize that digital has become a must have. It's not something that's just good to have.
Tell me about that. Tell me what sectors you've seen the fastest change in India over the last year.
Well, the fastest changes, I think, have taken place in the area of e commerce, where people are understanding that they need to own their customers. We have seen a huge amount of change in the edtech sector because, children have not been able to attend schools. So, any and every edtech company has actually evolved very rapidly. We've seen a lot of changes in the health sector. Nobody could ever imagine, the kind of virtual consultations that we are doing with doctors at this point of time. And also, in all the supply chains and the dealer networks, I think, we have seen very rapid changes. So changes are there in every single sector. Means I can't really think of a sector that hasn't evolved. And of course, if you look at the banking sector or the BFSI sector, they've been one of the leaders in this. They always were the leaders. And if you look at the amount of digital payments that are now going through, and in fact, I was looking at the numbers, and the government predicts that by 2025, we will be having 1.25 billion transactions per day, uh, in respect of, in all these monetary transactions that are taking off. In respect of e-commerce, when I said, we are seeing a lot of growth, actually we are seeing about 25-30% growth for most companies. However, in spite of that, only 5% of actual commerce is still digital. So we have huge space to grow.
You joined SBI in the 70s when it was a traditional bank, very little to do with technology-enabled systems, and you lived and led this digital transformation. I'd love to hear about that journey, and what do you think the key challenges were that you had to grapple with that might be useful for other companies to hear about?
Okay. I think, one of the biggest challenges that when you're going through a digital transformation, you have to have the entire CEO backing. That is, the number one person in the company must back it and must be passionate about it. And obviously, the board and the management, the top management, play a very important role in that, in the sense that they must to support it completely. Because unless and until you can get the buy-in of the rank and file, it's very difficult to bring about a change that is this fundamental. So I think, that is one of the things that we must look at. And if you look at one of the McKinsey reports, they say that almost 80% of the companies have started some kind of digital transformation, but only 3% have actually completed it. And I think the reason for this is that it lacks the kind of support that is required, from the very top. Because unless things flow from the top, the bottom ranks, they are the ones that are going to get convinced very easily. So we have to spend a lot of time in changing people's perception. In fact, more than doing the work itself, the physical work itself, I think what's much more important is to change perception, to change the perception that this is a requirement for my customer, that this is something that will empower me, empower my customer, actually give them the benefit of being able to be far more independent in what they do, and give them the elasticity and the freedom to do things at their own pace in their own times. Once you have this buy-in from the rank and file in an organization, you will see digitization moving very, very fast.
Of course, we also need to make sure that we bring everybody on this journey. And a lot of that is about giving people digital skills. Now, this is easy if you have access to the internet. It's easy, well, you could argue, if you're young, if you're in an urban area. Can you talk about some of the areas you think are more challenging and how you think we can give digital skills to people so that they aren't left behind?
I think that is one of the biggest challenges that this digital age is posing. If you look at India itself, for instance, how many people have smartphones? Not only smartphones, even if you look at the gender divide, many more men have phones than women. And then again, if you look at the urban rural divide, you'll find that in the rural areas, again, the number of people owning smartphones are far smaller than the number of people who are owning smartphones in the urban area. So we have one company, for instance, which is trying to bring out a smartphone within a very reasonable price, so as to ensure that every single Indian can have a screen of their own. And this is absolutely important, because unless and until you have access to the internet, unless and until you have the broadband to enable you to actually get on the net with a device that is compatible with it, you will be definitely left behind. That is one piece of it, giving people access. The other piece of it is the realization that skilling is very necessary. When we did the financial inclusion exercise that I talked about right in the beginning, called JAM, which is, the Jandhan accounts, as they were called at that time. The idea was that every single family must have at least one bank account. When we started, about 58% of the families in India had bank accounts. By the time we finished, 98%, in 7 months' time, at least one bank account was there per family, which enabled the government to directly put in the subsidy money into the bank accounts and prevent the huge leakage that was going on otherwise. Now, the fact of the matter is that, along with access, what really made this program very effective was the literacy that was imparted, the financial literacy, the digital literacy, as to how to actually operate these accounts and ensure that you got the full benefit of it. So, therefore, digital skilling is extremely important. I was looking at another report, and that report was saying that, actually speaking, reskilling your own people costs you 6 times less than hiring from outside. So, if you even look at the cost structures, companies themselves need to take up the reskilling work. As for the public at large, there are very many free platforms. For instance, we have a platform in Salesforce called Trailhead, which is free, and where people can actually go in and train themselves into the various ways in which digital work can be done. And actually, from the beginning of the pandemic, we have seen an uptick of almost 29% of usage of Trailhead, of the badges that have been actually acquired by people, which are given at the end of the course, or when a person successfully completes a particular module. So there has been an uptick of almost 29% there. People are aware that they need to reskill themselves, and there are very many platforms which do not cost anything, but you do need access to them. So, for access purposes, this is an infrastructure issue that needs to be addressed by the government for sure.
I'm interested in how you encourage women to get those skills as well. I know that's something that's very important to you. Have you seen as many women as men using the trailhead?
I have not. And that is absolutely one of the things, that I believe that we need to do right from the beginning. In fact, if you look at STEM education itself, I believe that we need to work hugely with women students, with girl students, to make them agreeable to try out the STEM areas of education. By tradition, somehow or the other, we have found that the women tend to go towards the liberal arts. I myself am an English literature major, and therefore, from there to have actually headed a Fortune 500 bank and the largest bank in India now into a tech company, it just shows that everything can be done. It's a question of wanting to get it done. And therefore, I think we need the right kind of incentives, the right kind of advocacy to ensure that we are getting our youngsters enthused enough to go in for STEM education, to enable them to obtain the kind of skills that will be necessary for the future.
Yes, I'm speaking to you as a political science major, and I completely agree with you on that. I wonder how your view of the digital future has changed at all since you joined Salesforce.
So I think, in respect of the digital future, one thing that has definitely changed is that digital is now a must have. You cannot survive without it. I really and truly believe that every single company, no matter with which area it is, it needs a very strong technology backbone. It need not be a IT company. Means there are people who say that banks will actually be IT companies doing banking. I don't believe that needs to be true, but I do believe that unless they have a very strong technological backbone, they will not be able to survive. That's for sure.
I wonder if you could talk about the cloud and why I know that the cloud is incredibly important to Salesforce. I know you're a believer in that. For India, what do you think the importance of it, and how will that help digital access?
See, one thing about the cloud, and we are cloud native, we were born in the cloud. So there's no way that I can say anything about it other than to say that this is something that is hugely empowering. To be on the cloud enables you to have the elasticity to take care of your demand elasticity. So there will be peak days, of activities. Now, to take care of that in on prem systems or in private cloud systems is extremely difficult. However, when you are on the public cloud, all of these can be managed very easily. So, if you're looking at agility, if you're looking at nimbleness, if you're looking at elasticity, cloud is the answer. But not only that, even if we are looking at security, cloud is the answer. And the reason for that is, for a company like us, trust matters a lot. And trust means that the customer's data is in trust in the clouds that we operate. And if that is the case, it is our job to ensure that they are safe. As a result, what happens is that there is a huge amount of time and effort spent in order to ensure that we are keeping everything secure. If there is any incident anywhere in the world, automatically, certain actions will be taken in order to ensure that something similar does not get repeated at our end. So therefore, you are forever scanning the entire ecosystem in order to ensure that you have got the right products and that you have got the right level of security, which again is very difficult if you have an on-prem system. Means, after all, you are limited by the way in which you can address anything that is happening across the globe. And therefore, if you're looking at cloud, whether it be for security, whether it be for elasticity and agility, as I said, cloud is really the answer to, and it is the way to go.
Can you talk about some of Salesforce's activities during COVID-19? I know that there was some really interesting data that you were able to use that tracked the pandemic, that helped send supplies where they were needed.
Absolutely. So we were actually running, the COVID map for India, and we've been doing it for many other countries as well. So, if you actually, when you get the COVID map of India, you get it graphically. So you see the green spots, you see the orange spots, the amber spots, and the red spots. And if you have, for instance, a dealer management system, and for instance, you are a supplier of cars, and you are sending cars to a place where it's turning from green to amber, you can stop the supplies to that place and instead send it to a place which is turning from red to green. Similarly, in respect of your loans, you can actually superimpose where your loans are on the COVID map, and then take a call as to these are the places where loans will need to be restructured, where you will have to give more time for people to recover and repay, whereas these are the places which are safe for you to lend on, and therefore you can continue your lending activities there. So there is a huge amount that you can do with the data that even is publicly available, and the data within the company, in order to determine your strategy, so that at the end of the day you get the best results. You are able to have a strategy that very clearly addresses the challenges that are constantly changing, and these maps, they keep changing on a daily basis. So you really need to evolve your strategy as the data evolves.
And that's what companies and the government can do with that data. Did you see them actually making use of it that way?
Oh, yes, in respect of a few of our companies, they have made use of it that way. But I don't think, it was very widespread, because, again, these realizations were just sinking in. But today, I do find a lot of interest among a lot of people to understand how this actually worked, and to then get it into their companies so that they can do far better risk management than they have been doing in the past.
I imagine that Piyush Goyal was using your technology. He mentioned yesterday that in fact the railroads
Yep.
had never been so busy as during the lockdown. So thank you so much
That's
to you, the chair and CEO of Salesforce India, Arundhati Bhattacharya. Thank you so much for joining us here at India Global Forum. And we'll be back in just a moment. Ben will be diving into these issues around the digital global future. Stay with us.